Well, hello, with Gratitude Matt listeners. My name is Matt Moran, and I'm the host for today's show. Before we introduce you to the guest today, I thought it was important to explain some of the goals and objectives that I have for the show. Many of you realize and know that I've been dealing with my own personal cancer recovery journey over the last 18 months. My wife Mary and I have been witness to so much love and support, and we're so grateful for that. Thank you to all that have supported us while we've been on this journey together. I feel called, though, today to give back in a more meaningful way. I recognize that somebody else out there is going to be faced with their own adversity. While it certainly could be cancer, it also could be addiction, it could be abuse, it could be loss of a family member, loss of a job, any number of forms of different adversity that we all face from time to time. And With Gratitude, Matt, is a place that you can come to find the courage to be grateful, regardless of how powerful that storm is. So if today's show inspires you in some way, shape, or form, please subscribe to it. Please comment on it, and please share it with others. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to today's guest, and that's my friend, Dr. Roy Vongtama. I met Roy Vongtama not by happenstance at all. I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. 18 months ago, I did not know Dr. Roy Vongtama. A good friend of mine, Greg, connected us. Greg called me one day, 5 or 6 days after being diagnosed with reoccurrence, and he shared with me a little bit about Dr. Roy Vongtama. And while his medical background is in radiation oncology, what really motivated me to connect him is that he was wrapping up a book called Healing Before You're Cured. And we'll certainly talk more about that. But I was so grateful to connect with Dr. Roy Vongtama. And Dr. Roy, thank you for everything that you've done for me over the last 18 months. Thank you from the entire Moran family. Small coincidence, Dr. Roy Vongtama grew up in Orchard Park, New York, where my wife grew up. And Mary actually coached Dr. Roy Vongtama in tennis. And that's probably why he's not on the tennis tour today, and he's practicing medicine instead. But Dr. Roy Vongtama, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I don't think it's your wife's fault at all that I didn't become a pro tennis player. But yeah, happy to be here and happy to be of service. And thank you.
Well, one of the things I mentioned the book Healing Before You're Cured, but before we get to that, Roy, I thought for our listening audience, it might be relevant to talk a little bit about your background and where you grew up and what type of family you grew up in, because I think that might bring some context to some of the work that you've done on Healing Before You're Cured.
Sure. I grew up, I'm Thai American and I grew up in Orchard Park and we were one of the only families that was a minority. So Buffalo's kind of a blue collar sort of experience. And that really shaped me because I had quite a bit of prejudice against me, even though I come from a family of physicians. My parents are both doctors and we were well off in that way. But in other ways, I had kind of a different experience because of that prejudice. But it shaped me a lot because I had this ability to do basically anything that money would allow us to do. I had, went to private Catholic school and got to have lessons in every sport I ever wanted to play and piano lessons, and I had all that. And I also, on the other side, though, had this other experience that definitely made me wonder, what was going on, because I had all these things on the outside, but on the inside, I wasn't feeling so good. And going forward beyond that, also I went to Catholic school, and I also my family's Buddhist, so there was another place of that didn't seem things were exactly fitting in that way as well. So that was the second thing, and then the third thing was, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life growing up. My dad told me, you can do anything you want after you finish medical school. So I had but there wasn't, it wasn't like there was any conflict in that. It was just, that's what I was told. And so that's what I knew I had to do. So all those things led me down this road where I was doing what everybody told me to do. And what everybody told me that was best for me to do to have me be happy on the inside. And then in the end, when I finished all of the stuff that everybody told me to do, I still wasn't happy. So that took me down a different road where I really had to figure out what I wanted to do. And I decided that I wanted to act, you know, so I wanted to become an actor. So I got a training spot in LA, and that allowed me to pursue acting because the chairman of the department, he wanted to be an actor. And when I told him that's why I wanted to come to UCLA, he was very excited about it because he felt like, you know, being of a creative mind would be help me in my research. And as long as I continued doing everything he asked of me, I could take all my vacation days to do training and in acting. So I did both at the same time. And I never really looked back after that. So I've been doing both. That inner work through acting and through therapy and through meditation, which all got added on, and then continued on my medical career as well. So I've been doing both, and now I'm back at UCLA working there, and also coaching people, and also producing and acting and kind of doing lots of different things.
Well, Roy, I took the opportunity to Google your name last night as I was just thinking about it. And I guess the good news, bad news is being famous like you are, you show up in Wikipedia. And the one thing that you left out there is that you graduated from University of Pennsylvania magna cum laude, which I know that sometimes you get embarrassed about your academic accomplishments, but that's certainly a noteworthy school to not only graduate from, but graduate magna cum laude is certainly something to be proud of.
All right. Well, then you can add it because you can't add things about yourself. So you're going to have to add it for me if it's in there. But my niece told me actually really funny. So I'm with my family. My niece told me, she goes, I asked Siri who you were, and she knew. So she did it on the on an app. So that was kind of funny. So
And
I
it
think.
isn't it? So we got connected through our friend Greg.
Mhm.
Isn't it when you were doing some work in Philadelphia that you actually met his brother-in-law, right? And you connected.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. So Ramon Rivera, who's married to Greg's sister, Lizette, I was doing internship with Ramon, and we went out one night, and then at the end of the night, I saw them holding hands. So I said, if you're gonna hold hands with her, man, you better be a good guy. Don't, take care of her. She's my one of my best friend's little sisters. So he said, oh, I will. And so, now they're right next to you, right in Orchard Park. So
Well, Roy, you were so kind before. I think your book went live. Was it last February? Is that right?
yeah, March, yeah,
March of
February, March.
19. You sent me the PDF version of it right when we connected. I read it immediately, and there were a lot of things in there. And the book Healing Before You're Cured does break down the four houses of health, which I'd like to talk a little bit about. But it's your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, and your emotional health. I think for me, the thing that I've always worked out and always been into physical fitness, but what it really caused me to really think about is the mental side of it. And maybe let's start there and
Hmm.
with the mental house.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, that aren't familiar with the work that I've been doing, so I break everything down to physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and everybody kind of gravitates toward one house first that they feel is probably the most impactful for them, and for you it was the mental house. And one thing I know about you, Matt, your mind's very strong. So if you decide something's going to happen, that is exactly what is going to happen. And that's a perfect mind to work with in that way, because the mind really has a lot of power that I think our modern culture doesn't fully tap into. And the research now is really starting to back up what I'm saying. So what you actually think actually impacts your DNA in the way that it allows different expression of the DNA and different proteins to be expressed. So If you're thinking negative thoughts and you're pounding your brain and your body with negative thought, it affects your health of your DNA. And they've seen that with people who are depressed. Their DNA is not healthy. The telomere, which is the structure that allows the DNA to replicate, the longer it is, the healthier and less stressed your DNA overall is. And people who are depressed that are thinking a lot of negative thoughts, have low serotonin, those people have short telomere lengths. And if you give those people, if you put them on antidepressants, you find that their telomere length actually goes back up to a um, normal length. That's one piece of evidence. But even even in spite of that, having that ability to really train your mind to only think positive things is really difficult, as you know, in your own experience. You have to have a certain willpower behind your ability to think like that, because it's very easy in this world to go the other way, right?
Yep, for sure. As I try to talk about the houses of health with anybody that's willing to listen, and the one where I get probably the most questions behind is the mental to emotional side of it. Maybe could you expand upon what your perspective is on the differences? I've had people say, well, gosh, isn't that really in the same family, if you will?
Mm. Yeah,
And I'd love your perspective on that.
that's an interesting point. So the way I look at it, if you kind of visualize right now, you have your body and you have your mind, and in between, in a way, you have your heart. You have this space in between, and emotion. If you want to use that word, emotion, the feeling space, emotion is really emotion. It's energy in motion. So what you think gets translated to your body a lot of times through that emotion, through that emotional space. Um, so, for example, if you've witnessed something that makes you angry, and you decide, and you say, "Wow, that really pisses me off," and you decide, go, but I can't feel that right now. I'm at work. I'm with my wife or my girlfriend. I can't let that out, or my kids are around, and so you've thought something and you've interpreted something in the world that's come into your body, and you've registered it as anger, but you don't let your body experience that feeling. Then it gets stuck in you. So in that way, you develop this backlog of emotion in your body, and there's a quite a bit of new research coming out in animals, but there's actually one in humans that came out last year that found that people with head and neck cancer, people who actually reacted to their diagnosis when they got it with anger and sadness, and those people actually do better than people who are like, oh, I'm fine, no big deal. So people who actually, so what does that mean? Does that mean that you should be angry and punch holes in walls? Like, no. But if you have an experience where you're actually angry and you're pretending like you're not, and you're what I call a spiritual bypass, where you bypass over the emotion because you don't think it's right, or you don't think it's healthy, or you think other people will be hurt by it, or you need to feel, you need to have everybody perceive you as a strong person, then you're gonna suppress emotion in your body, and you're gonna have repercussions on that. And this study that I'm talking about, this head and neck cancer study, was the first study I've seen where they actually specifically looked at that exact question, and they found that and statistically that the people who expressed their emotion in that scenario, obviously a horrible, having that diagnosis, and as you know, it's not something you want, but to let it be so that you don't have a reaction at all and pretend like everything's fine when it's not. That's the problem.
You know, I don't know. I can't remember if I told you. I know I've told a number of people. I think I might have told you this. We connected for the first time right around Christmas of 2018. And I just remember Mary and I even talked shortly after shortly after learning that cancer had reared its head again, that particular Christmas was probably one of the most peaceful, because I think so many things were brought back into perspective. And I know just through talking to you, really, I didn't really practice mindfulness prior to that.
Mm.
And I owe it to you and the work that you did to regularly practice it. Today, I don't get out of bed without, or I don't do anything without reading Jesus Calling, and that's just kind of how I start my day.
Mm,
And it's just been really helpful. But the name of the show is With Gratitude, Matt. And I started my blog. I guess curious, how correlated would you say just finding gratitude in the day is to having a strong mental state and or setting yourself up to emotionally react to things, call it prudently or as best we can.
sure. Yeah, that's a great. Now I just wanted because it cut out for a second. You said that Christmas was the most, and then the word cut out.
I'm sorry. It was probably the peaceful. We
Oh,
we just had
peaceful. Okay, great.
we
That's what I
had
thought you said.
in
Yeah.
2018 that Christmas we got through it, and we're dealing with the fact that we have this what could be a devastating news, but 2 3 weeks back we looked back on it and we said, we had this beautiful Christmas. And that's when I just started thinking about, like, the cancer diagnosis doesn't have to be like the death of me. It could
Hmm.
be what fuels me. And
Yeah.
that's what over the last 18 months I've found that it's given me different energy.
Yeah.
And I owe it a lot to you, but I'm just, now we've got a show around gratitude, and I'm just curious from your perspective if, you know, what sort of correlations there are to strong mental well-being and strong emotional well-being to just finding gratitude in the life we live.
And this is a great point because some people would think that having gratitude and being angry don't fit together, you know? And they would think, well, you just told us that if you're angry, you need to go into it and you need to express it, and that now you're telling us you should have gratitude. Well, your story is really amazing because um, really in your mind, it's really a choice. It's really a choice in that moment how you're going to interpret something in your life. Now, you can't just, this is the thing, you can't just flip over into gratitude if you've never really practiced it before. It's like you're asking someone in that scenario getting a cancer diagnosis to lift a 50-pound weight when you've never lifted a 5-pound weight. It's a big thing to start with. So, starting gratitude is super important in situations where you have not, you've never tried it before. But I always tell people, I call it 5 stars a day. At the end of the day, you just write down 5 things that you're grateful for and start there. When your day's not hard, when you don't have a bad day, it's quite easy to do it. But when you have a bad day, then it's a lot harder because it's a lot easier to go to the negative things. But they found that if you can practice gratitude, and the more you practice it, the more you can realize it in your body and your experience in your mind and your heart, you're going to feel happier inside. You're going to feel less stress. You're going to have this place where you can have a refuge inside of yourself. And it's so important to have that. And it's pretty amazing that that was your experience in that Christmas, because you're right. There are many people that are processing a lot of um, hurt, and they're mourning a lot through the hearing they have cancer. But and like in your case, this is something I've seen before. I had a patient once who got diagnosed with lung cancer, and he said, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I said, well, how is that? He said, I didn't know how old my kids were because I was working so hard. I was trying to do all this stuff for what I thought was for the best of them, but I didn't even know how old my kids were. I couldn't pin it down because I couldn't remember because I hadn't thought about it. And realizing that my life is going to one day be over, you know, it really stopped me in my tracks, and told me to really appreciate what's there. And now, Doc, I wake up every day and I walk into this clinic and I get this treatment. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for everybody around me. And I think sometimes people just need to get that jolt, you know. And it's a powerful thing though. Your testimony is really powerful in that way.
Well, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And we're just having some fun with it. Um, I want to move to the word disease. I've heard you talk before about that word, and if you break it down, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's dis-ease.
Yeah. Yeah.
dis-ease, and maybe could you expand upon that? It hit home with me, and it really made me start really thinking about the four houses of health. But I'd like you to share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it sounds like wordplay, when I said emotion and now there's dis-ease. But actually words have power. They have meaning, and if you think of all illness as dis-ease, meaning you're not in ease, you're in stress, then it really is a powerful metaphor. But actually it's true. That's exactly what disease is. It's dis-ease. You've taken the natural state of the body, which is harmony, which is gratitude, which is this feeling of flow, and you've made it really tense. Our culture is I saw this study. They said in 1985, they said, with the advance of automation, people are going to be working 50% less. You're gonna have so much free time now because of all the things that get automated. And in fact, you look in 2020, the United States has the shortest amount of vacation time in the entire world, entire industrialized world. It's just under 2 weeks, I think. And we've taken this amazing ability to automate and to have industrial revolution and I mean, a technological revolution, sorry. And we've taken, instead of turn it into a benefit, we've turned it into another crutch to occupy ourselves. When we should be having ease, we're looking on Facebook, we're looking on Instagram, and we're comparing ourselves with other people, with other people, and saying, and they found in the studies that creates anxiety, that creates tension. And tension is really what's causing illness. It's that state in our bodies where tension, when you have muscle tension, you have a low flow state of blood. Oxygen is not coming in. It's not able to grab, what I guess they call toxic. You have these metabolites in your body. It's not able to move things through in an orderly way, and so you get this buildup over time. You have this tension in your body, and it results in what, if you look in the research, they call it allostatic load. It's the amount of stress load that goes on your system. And that load keeps going higher and higher and higher and higher until your body breaks down. And then you have a disease, which is really just dis-ease. And you look back in the chain, you've been loading your body with all this tension, lack of sleep, mental stress, negative thinking, resentment, blocking of emotions, lack of gratitude. You put all those things together, and you've created a system that is not going to sustain itself.
Roy, you touched on earlier the fact that I happen to gravitate towards the mental side of it. That's what kind of when you talk about the four houses of health, that's what I probably needed the most help on. Is there one area that you feel patients of yours struggle the most with, or is it kind of equal across the board?
I take everybody where they come in. So sometimes people come in and I say, you need to be eating salad. And they're like, salad? Salad? And if you're on salad, you're not getting into mental or emotional or spiritual aspects. I'm just trying to get you to give the body what it needs, So there are a lot of people are just like that. And it is regional, it depends where you're at. And, but a lot of times, the hardest thing to get people to do is to address the emotional side, from what I've seen. And a spiritual thing is, it's definitely a personal journey. Some people want to go there, and some people don't want to go there. And I never force anybody to go either to an emotional or spiritual or mental place. Or even a physical place. If you don't want to change, I have people coming in with, lung cancer with cigarettes in their front pocket, in their shirt. And I'll say, I'm just going to say this once, it would really help if you stopped, and they say, well, I already have cancer. What's the point of stopping? I'm like, well, there's actually research showing that if you do stop now, your survival's better. So I always pull out the research angle. Being a doctor, I
Yep.
always pull out the angle of saying, look, I'm going to tell you once, and when you're wearing the white coat and you're in that room, in that environment, there is a little bit more of an impact, I've found. Um,
Well, you're practicing out in LA, and I was happy to hear that you kind of highlighted already the reason why you ended up there, and that's your acting interest. Before we jump into that, like, how did you get interested in acting, or what caused you to move in that direction?
you want to know the real story?
I do.
All
Yeah.
right. So okay. So one day I was actually going out a lot and actually partying a lot when I was in an internship. This is what you do. You know, work all day and then you go out and hang out with your friends. And I had been working all night and I went out. I don't know what it was. Oh, I was trying to find my friends and I took my bike from um, the hospital and I was riding around looking for I was pretty much lost riding around on my bike and I hit a curb and I fell off the curb. I fell off my bike onto the sidewalk and I looked up and I was in front of this place on Walnut Street called Walnut Street Theater. And I said, you know, this is why I'm not happy. I need to be famous. This is the thing. This is going to make me happy. You know, I'm going to take this acting class here. I'm going to sign up tomorrow. And I don't know maybe I'm falling off the bike or not getting any sleep, you know. So I went to that acting class and the acting coach there, he had me do a monologue and he said to me, he goes, you know, what do you do during the day? I said, well, I'm a doctor. And he said, I think you should stick to that. And that's a wrong thing to say to me, you know. And I was like, oh, okay, is that how it is? Okay, I'll be back here. And it might have been his sales tactic, but I came back and I really worked really hard at it. And I was like, oh, you know, in order to actually be real, I have to feel something. And I couldn't feel anything. The only thing I could really feel was sadness. And anytime I had to be angry or I had to be happy, I just would start tearing up and crying. I had all this hurt inside of me. And I realized that the only time I really felt good in that time of my life was when I was acting, because I was emoting. I was getting this stuff out of me that was kind of buried. In a lot of ways, acting was my first therapy. And
Well, I'll tell you what, that's beautiful, and thanks for the real answer there. Uh, the I met you first because of your or your radiation oncology background, and but quickly learned that you had this acting career as well. And I was so excited to have the opportunity to meet you in New York City when you were performing Brothers Paranormal.
yeah,
And I didn't know what to expect, but I was traveling with my boss, and I had told my boss how I met you and that you wrote this book, Healing Before You're Cured. And he's like, "Where are we going tonight? And what's he doing? He's acting?" And I said, "Yeah, he's an actor too." I thought you said he's a oncologist. Well, he is that. And Roy, we went there that night, and my boss Rob does go to a lot of plays. He's been all over the country, Broadway shows, and he was blown away. That you did a remarkable job. So you've come a long way from the time that you walked in that first acting class.
I was like, where is the story going? No, yeah, thank you. No, you know, that's the thing. I think I see it in you too, is it's like when you love something and you decide that this is what you're gonna do, you just do it, you know. And so that was something I always wanted. I was like, well, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna be good at it, you know. I want to feel and I want to do that well.
Well,
So
I remember the other thing is, when we would talk early on, and we'd talk about my professional career, and I love my professional career. I'm in the investment business, but that's not the only thing I'm doing, and that's your work as an actor kind of helped me fuel the direction that I'm going in with Gratitude Matt. It started with the blog that I started about a year ago, and that's the blog Gratitude Matt, and now this show, and I'm really excited about it. So I think you've been a big influence in that aspect as well. So um, as I kind of wrapping things up here, and you think about the four houses of health, Roy. What have you learned, or what area have you learned the most from your patients? Any particular piece of that you've kind of helped you reinforce the importance of all four of those houses?
yeah, it harkens a little bit back to what you said and how you handle your diagnosis. When I see people walking in that are they're walking and smiling at their lives, and I know they don't have, they're not gonna, they have there's a limit on that life, as there is on everybody else, but they truly live in that moment. And anytime I see that, it stops me in my tracks, because I'm usually processing some fairly minor incident in my own head where I'm resentful or I'm angry about how I was treated, or someone didn't think about me, anything like that. Immediately, when I see someone with that, with a diagnosis that is going to be the reason they're going to leave the planet, and they're able to smile and laugh and enjoy the moment, even being in the basement of a cancer center, they, if you, if they can do that, then I can also say to myself, I say, you know what, this stuff that you're worrying about, or you're upset about, or you've decided to, you know, uh, be upset over, you gotta let it go and think about the positive things and really focus on that. And it's not even almost a thought. When I see someone like that, I just like, okay, that's done. I'm not even gonna. And usually it's because I'm holding on to it. And I think that's what most of us do. We hold on to things. So
Right.
yeah.
One other thing that came to mind before I have one final question that I want to ask you, but as we sit here in pandemic, Roy, um, is there anything that you've learned, kind of reinforcing the four houses of health as we sit through pandemic, or witnessed how people are responding to?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. I have learned that science is under attack right now. Really, there's there's news and there's science, and uh, the role of the expert has been minimized in our culture. It's more about what we as Americans feel like we want to do, and it's at the exclusion of other people. And I've really seen that a lot, and I'm trying to combat that by doing as many informational and things like this, podcasts, trying to do my own part to really show people that science matters. I've trained a long time to know things, and unfortunately for a lot of people, I do know more than you. I do know more than you in this area. I've studied for 26 years in this particular area, and so I think in our culture right now, I'm very surprised, and somewhat not surprised that there's a lack of respect for people who know more, and there are people who know more than me, like Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci. He knows way more than me. And so when he says something about science, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I agree, I still listen to him because he knows more than me. We've lost this respect for people, and it doesn't mean that Dr. Fauci is a better person than you or I, or anything like that. It's just that he knows more. This is his life, you
Right.
know. And I think there's a lack of understanding or maybe a willful, purposeful lack of understanding, because it conflicts with what we want to do. And when we want to do conflicts with what we should do, then you have a moral issue on your hands. And if you're not able to look at things from that perspective, from a spiritual, moral perspective, you're going to choose the wrong way. You know, that's
Interesting.
something I've seen.
Absolutely. Interesting. Well, Roy, the one, I'm going to have one final question that I'm going to ask each one of my guests, and it's kind of a deep one. So you may have to think about it for a minute. But
Hmm.
as you think about your life and everything that you've experienced, is there one particular thing that either took place in your life or happened to you that at the time was very devastating, but as time passed, you were able to kind of grow from that and learn that it really was a blessing that that took place, and today you're grateful that you went through that period? Is there
Mm.
anything that comes to mind, and if so, maybe talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, this is a deep question, because most of the things I always interpret things as being good for me. I've wondered why that is, and I was thinking about it, and my parents both lost their parents when they were very young. My dad was lost his parents on his birthday when he was 4,
Wow.
and my mom lost her dad. Uh, he was murdered when she was 11, out in front of their house. So in Thai culture, though, you don't do anything with that. You just go on. So when I grew up in that's so now we're talking about generational trauma. We're talking about, this house I grew up but that hadn't dealt with any kind of this loss, So I was living in a house where we had everything on the outside, but on the inside, my parents hadn't dealt with any of that. And growing up as a child in that house, when the parents, when they were children, didn't get taken care of in the right way, then emotionally, I also was impacted by that as well. And I always wondered, because in church and stuff, they always tell you, oh, the home is the place of your refuge, and then for me, like emotionally, that wasn't really the case. I was given tremendous discipline, tremendous work ethic, and tremendous self-sufficiency, and um, uh, for a lot of years I was resentful of that, but now I look at it and I go, hey, I look at it both ways. I said, I needed to go through that. And I have this ability now to, like, not, it's very, very hard to phase me. It's very hard now in my life to, I shouldn't say that because I'm sure now something's going to be sent to me where I can't handle it. But I generally I feel like I have a lot of bandwidth inside of me to interpret things and make them a positive experience for myself, in a real way, though, not for other people, you know and that's because, to survive a lot of times our own upbringing, it takes that ability, and some people are more successful at it than others. And because of that way I was raised, with a lot of the discipline and not much of the heart, it allowed me to persevere through very difficult circumstances. So I'm very grateful for that.
That is so beautiful, Roy. And again, I want to thank you for being part of today's show. I know that our listeners today are going to be drawn to how you've broken down the four houses of health. And I'd ask for anybody that finds these interesting. I know you can find Roy's book, Healing Before You're Cured, on Amazon. If you want, you can have it on your doorstep tomorrow morning. So please go out there if you found any of this interesting. I know it might not be cancer. It could be any other adversity that you might be faced with. And even if you think that you're really strong in those four houses, that's the spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional house. If you feel that you're really strong, I would suggest that you might be able to learn a little bit something or a little bit more about each one of those, and it might strengthen you to be even more powerful. So please go out to Amazon and pick it up. Roy, I can't thank you enough. I told everybody on the front end, I don't think anything happens by chance. I look at what happened to you and I by us connecting back in December of 2018. I look at that as like a little God wink, him looking down on us and kind of saying, hey, you know what, Matt, this is going to be all right. And the journey that I'm on, I know I am going to be all right because I'm in good hands. So audience, as we wrap up, I think there's three things that I did really encourage each of you to think about and do each and every day. And we've touched on gratitude today, and I'd start there. I think it's really important that you find gratitude regardless of how dark the day is. Second, I think it's really important to be present. It would have been really easy for me to say, Roy, back in 2018, that I'm in good hands, I'm in good shape, but I was presented the opportunity to connect with you, and it opened my eyes up to a different side that I really wasn't that strong in. And I would say just be present to those that are in front of you or opportunities that are presented to you. You never know what's on the back end of that. So be present. And the last part is make sure you're paying attention to how you're feeding your mind, body, and soul. What goes into will come out. And today's guest was my good friend, Dr. Roy Vongtama. Remember to subscribe to the show, share it with others, and comment on it if you enjoyed today's show. Until next time, with gratitude, Matt listeners, find the courage to be grateful at Godspeed. Thank you.